always open with a local restaurant to encourage our people to remember that they're still open and they're fighting hard to stay open. And we're finally starting to see some fruits from that with them opening a little bit more. And like I said, I've been asked to bring in some North County. I live in Hillcrest in San Diego, so I kind of went around my block and made sure I got those restaurants. But we want to make sure that we remind people that there are hardworking restaurant owners and servers and bartenders who are going to need. We're going to need them again, and we don't want to forget about them. So we have restaurant Valentino today.
So Ricardo,
that's my cue to jump in, right?
that's exactly
That's you.
right.
So you tell us about where is Valentino? Where's the restaurant?
Valentina is at 810 North Coast Highway 101, located right in the heart of Leucadia. We're about stone's throw from the train tracks, which means at some point, I guarantee you, during this Zoom call, there will be a blare of a horn and the train will be zooming past us. We call it the Leucadia Minute, and it's really great when you're welcoming someone into the restaurant, and the next thing you know, it's, welcome into Valentina, and then as the train flies by.
Nice.
So,
well, you are the, I'm not sure your full title, but I know you're also sommelier there.
Yes, so my title with this group is the Director of Operations. I help the ownership grow their restaurant company. So we have Valentina here. We're also responsible for Moto Deli down the street, which is a artisanal boutique deli that's really popular, as well as Corner Pizza, which is our new Brooklyn-inspired pizzeria that features an eclectic appetizer selection, including oysters, and a thoughtfully curated but small wine list just down the street. But through it all, as much as I love service and I love taking care of people, I also love wine very much. So I am a certified sommelier, and that's what we decided to do for this little shindig, is to feature one of my favorite bubbles.
Yes, and what is that one?
So this one comes to us from one of our friends, actually, who has a champagne importing business. So this is Lucien Collard. I think it's very rich that this comes from Boozy, B-O-U-Z-Y. There's a couple Grand Cru appellations in Champagne that their vineyards are specifically known to be either more expressive for Pinot Noir or a little calmer for Chardonnay. So Boozy is one of those regions that makes premier Pinot Noir. And it's not altogether too boozy. It's still Champagne. It's not hard liquor. You're not going to end up on the floor after a bottle of it.
Well, that sounds wonderful. And you're still in business. You're still open, and you're doing some serving outside, maybe.
Yeah. So we actually were fortunate to work with the city of Encinitas to go ahead and have a lot of seating out in our sidewalk out there, which you can see through the window. A lot of seating out there. There's a seating in our patio out there, the covered patio.
Nice.
As well as, obviously now with Orange Tier, we are permitted up to 50% indoor capacity, which means currently I'm at a table here for 10 that will be arriving later this evening. So
great, and I think we can all, that sounds wonderful. And I think we can all agree that we're excited for the city to try to keep those outdoor spaces open for us, which would be wonderful. We live in San Diego. We pay a lot to live in San Diego. Let's enjoy the outside weather. Well, let's toast to you and that wonderful restaurant. I can't wait. I saw some heads nodding, Vanya, for example. So definitely a few people have been there. Thank you, Ricardo.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.
Hopefully you'll have
Cheers.
some lovely wine.
Yes. Yeah. David.
Thank you, Ricardo, and thank you, Darren. So I think we may have some guests today who I'm seeing some faces that I haven't seen before. And we did extend an invitation to members of the library to join us today. So I'm hoping that we have some with us, which is fantastic. So if you have not been with us before, Aperitivo in Italian is like a happy hour, it's an opportunity for you to have a drink and enjoy company with other people. So if you don't have a drink in your hand and you want to run to your refrigerator, feel free to do that, because this is meant to be for some people, the beginning of the weekend. For those of us that are in production with the opera, not so much. But, it's late enough in the day that you can enjoy a drink while we talk with an artist. And I have to say, I am thrilled to welcome today as our artist, Patrick Carfizzi, who just walked out of rehearsal.
Yes.
Rehearsal just ended at 5:30 today. So Patrick, welcome.
Thank you, David. Wonderful to be with you. Wonderful to be with you all.
And are you still at the Kroc Center?
Yes, still at the Kroc Center. We're just outside the theater at the Kroc Center, and forgive the bit of noise in the background. It's just, finishing breaking down the rehearsal from the day.
That's okay. So, but that's kind of exciting, I think, because, typically we do it with somebody that's at their home, but, look, we're rehearsing an opera. So why not bring one of our cast members who's actually in rehearsal to the stage of this Aperitivo, which is fantastic. So welcome back, I have to say. And one of the things that I like to do in this series is bring back people that have made an appearance here so we can remind people of the times they've had a chance to see you as an artist. And this is your third time
Yes.
San Diego Opera, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I was lucky enough to join you all for Nixon in China in 2015, then came back in 2017 for Pirates of Penzance as Major General Stanley. And now here we are for Barber, our Beep Barber, which I'm very excited for.
So if you remember in Nixon in China, our audience, he was Henry Kissinger in Nixon in China. And, I had just been hired when that production happened, and I came to see it, but I was not general director yet. I was not going to start until the summer. But that was a fantastic production, and you were amazing in it. I mean, we'll talk more about you being, I'm gonna give a little tease, the Man of 1,000 Faces, which you were named recently in the press. But you can really adopt a lot of characters. You just do physically. And you were a great Kissinger, and you were hysterical as modern Major General. And we'll remind people of that in a minute too. But you'll be the same as Bartolo, I know. So I can't wait to see
Thank you.
Yeah. So 3 times here, but I have to say one of the facts that I find amazing when I read about you is 20 plus now, I think, right? Years at the Met, right?
That's correct, yeah. This past December, this past Christmas Eve, actually was this past Christmas Eve of 2019. So yes, the previous. My gosh, how time has kind of
well, this year's been a little weird. Let's just say
exactly. This year's been a little weird, but yeah, Christmas Eve of 2019 was the 20th anniversary of my Met debut, so feel insanely fortunate to be singing there for that long.
And when people, sometimes I'll interview people and they say, yeah, I've sung at the Met, and they'll do, they have sung a couple of productions or 3 productions or something. This may be old, but I think it's more than maybe 30. I don't know. You tell us what.
I think it's about 30 at this point. I think it's 30, 34. I mean, I don't actually keep track numbers wise. I leave that to Mom. Yeah. Mom loves to keep track of all those numbers. I think it's somewhere around 370 performances at this point, something like that.
Wow.
So yeah.
So if you think about that, sort of on an average of over 30 years, that's a lot of performances at the Met. So you are I would say one of the people that has performed as much as anyone that I know at the Met, which is pretty amazing.
I mean, it's a great honor and it's a great joy. And to be amongst so many who have given, 300 and 400 performances, it's just, I step back from it sometimes and pinch myself and go, okay, let's keep working. Let's get back to work. Let's keep working. That's the job. Keep working.
300 is good. Let's make it to 400, right? Or more.
Well, 400. I mean, as many as they'll have me for. But I mean, if I were to lay out a number, I would hope for 700 would be awesome. Not to be greedy, but 700 would be awesome. But no, as long as they'll have me, I'll be happy to be there.
That's fantastic. So one of the things that we like to do in this series is, some of our audience sort of knows you through a couple of roles, but I want them to get to know you as a person and, influences and all that. So tell us a little bit tell us where you grew up, and what role, if at all, did music play in your life as a child?
Fantastic. I grew up in Newburgh, New York, 60 miles north of Manhattan. I literally went to a high school that was backed up to a dairy farm. My father was a dairy farmer growing up, then moved into real estate. My mother, real estate, and then a teacher in her later years. Music was something that we were introduced to at a very young age. I started playing euphonium and baritone horn when I was 8 years old, 7, 8 years old. Played flutophone first, and the music instructor said, "It'd be fantastic if you want to, be a brass player." I said, "Fantastic, I'll be a brass player," and I loved it, and I still love it to this day. Participated in Tuba Christmas, and really got into jazz.
Wow.
Yep, really got into jazz at a very young age, and thought for a long time that jazz trombone was going to maybe be a thing. And then I started to sing. Right around the same time, sang in chorus. My voice changed very early when I was 11 years old.
Wow.
And the middle school chorus went from soprano and alto to soprano, alto, and one bass.
Which opens up a lot more repertoire.
It does, but also puts a lot of responsibility on that one bass.
Okay, exactly.
So yeah, music was a big part of my life, and my parents were phenomenal at encouraging myself and my brothers to pursue voice lessons, piano lessons. We drove all over Southern New York State to meet with teachers. I worked with people from the United States Military Academy Band, which was an amazing gift to study tuba, trombone, and euphonium. So I had a lot of early musical opportunities. And then we joined a local play group, a local church theater group.
Yeah.
And did summer stock there, and just kind of, at age 16, I had a bit of a health issue, Lyme disease, that kind of lingered for a few years. And at age 16, as I started to come out of it, I learned that the one thing that really kept me focused and sane and happy was music. Through all of that, in and out of hospitals and all of this other stuff, the one thing that kept me going was music, and in particular singing. And so I said to mom and dad, I think I want to try and do this. I don't know if it's going to work. And they're like, "Go, try.
Wow.
Go to the Met. Go to the Met and see a show." And by luck, I was in the touring production of that show almost 20 years later to the day in Houston.
Wow.
So
what was the show?
Magic Flute, the Hockney production.
And you saw Papageno and you're like, I can do that, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And then I met Håkan Hogegård in Santa Fe a few years later, and I was like, "Oh, you are Papageno! Oh my gosh!" It was amazing.
Mind blown, right? Yeah.
Mind blown, and so many connections for me through that performance. My teacher at Catholic University made her debut the night that I saw the performance as well.
Wow.
It's a small world.
I love hearing this because music, not always, it's very common, not always starting with singing, but music being important, singing being embraced at some point, but also theater being an important role for you, right? So learning to express yourself in a lot of different ways at a very young age. And the same thing happened to me. I was a trumpet player and a violin player, and I started singing in high school, but I was an actor before I started singing. And then I sort of put it all together, and I'm like, oh, actually it all comes together in opera, right? You can actually kind of make all this work together. So education, let's talk about where you went to college.
Sure. I went to Catholic University. My path to Catholic was very fun. Mom and dad again said, let us know where you want to go, and we'll get in the car and we'll pack up the trailer, and we'll go on a camping trip and investigate colleges. And we did. And Catholic was what I settled on because of the teacher, because of Sharon Chrisman. And I just knew from the moment that I heard her give a master class. And then I looked in the program and realized I had seen her perform, and I just knew. I said, no, this is someone I really hope that I can have the opportunity to work with. They invited me to the program, and away we went. So that was my undergrad, and then my grad school was Yale.
Great. And who did you study with at Yale?
Richard Cross.
Of course.
Yes.
So for
Yep.
those of you that don't know, that's sort of this legacy that's been at Yale. Doris and Richard Cross are really highly established and esteemed voice teachers that have just put out a ton of singers from Yale. And Yale, there's also an element of Yale in the music department that's very sort of scholarly, right? But then
Mhm.
there's this element that's really geared towards, I think, smart pedagogical teaching. So scholarly also, but really performance oriented, and put out a ton of really great singers. So I didn't know you'd gone to Yale. That's great.
Yeah, I went to Yale, and it was actually it almost didn't happen because I threw out the invitation.
Huh.
I was invited for an
By
audition.
accident, I assume.
No, intentionally.
Oh.
No, I was a B+ student in high school and college, and I thought, oh, this is nonsense. No one will ever want me to go to Yale. I'm not an Ivy League. I don't do that. No, that won't happen to me. And my mother dug it out of the trash and uncrumpled it and said, you are going to send this audition tape, and then we are going to drive you. And I went to Yale, and Doris and Richard Cross were there, and they said, do you want to come to Yale? And I went, what?
That is awesome. That's so great. Now, did you, a lot of our singers go from college to some of the young artist programs, and they are great training for singers. Some singers manage to not go that career path, but did you do some of the young artist programs?
I did. I went to Santa Fe for 3 summers.
Yeah.
I was in Santa Fe for 3 summers, the kind of odd third summer apprentice, which is a very kind way for them to help someone transition into doing supporting work.
Yep.
And that's exactly what they did. So yeah, I was there 97, 98, 99 as an apprentice. And that was the only formal young artist program that I did. I always like to think about my first, well, all of my years at the Met, basically to date, as being one long, fantastic young artist program where you just get to go into the house and listen and learn and observe and just watch so many fantastic craftspeople do their work and just try to absorb as much as you can.
So for those that don't know, that are watching, Santa Fe for a long time has had one of the more important young artist programs, and they provide, excellent coaching and teaching, but also performance opportunities. And, what Patrick was referring to is that sort of transitioning. You cover roles when you're young, and then occasionally get a small thing. But if you're actually lucky enough to be one of the people that is extended a little further, you start doing more substantial stuff while you're at Santa Fe. And it's an important house. I mean, when we're back to post-COVID, we'll go back to what happened before, which means I will say almost every general director in the opera field goes to Santa Fe in the summer, precisely to see excellent opera, but also to make sure we're seeing the crop of young artists that are going to be tomorrow's important singers, right? So did that lead to the Met? How did that happen?
That kind of. I had done the Met competition at a very what some would consider a very early age. My teacher in undergraduate said, you have to go, and actually she relayed this story to me in more detail only about 3 or 4 months ago. She said, you have to go do this. And what had happened behind the scenes is she had picked the phone and called Lenore Rosenberg and said, I'd really like you to hear this young man. I know he's young for the competition. And Lenore said, he's young. Let's see what happens. So I went and I did, and I was, I had a good showing at the competition. I met one fantastic, amazing gentleman named Eric Owens there, who sang as gloriously then as he does now. Yeah, so that was my first step into kind of the universe of the Met.
Yep.
And in my last year at Yale, I did an audition for the Young Artist Program at the Met. Doris and Richard said, go take the audition, see what they say. I took the audition, it went fairly well. Got a phone call 3 weeks later. Pardon me, let me back up. First got notification 2 days later. Thank you very much for applying. We're not interested.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, well, I tried. There we go. The Met has said no. Oh well. Got a call 3 weeks later. My father picked up the phone. He thought it was that Lenore Rosenberg was a fundraiser. And he proceeded to say to her in his Brooklyn accent, no, you don't understand. He is a student. He has no money to give you. And she finally said to him, Mr. Carfizzi, if you don't let me speak to your son, I can't offer him his debut. And
Wow.
which was followed by a string of expletives, which we shall not repeat. And he's like, Patrick! And so I came down the hallway and I walked into where the other phone was and picked it up. And my father, of course, is doing his best Darth Vader into the phone. So Nora Rosenberg says, Mr. Carfizzi, you got to hang up.
Right.
Oh, sorry.
He's on the extension, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So,
so funny.
and that's how I was offering my debut at the Met.
That's awesome. So again, for people that don't know, the Met is a universe. It's a machine, but there's different aspects. I think universe is a better description because there's planets and then there's all kinds of other things that orbit around it. There is a young artist program that's, really meant to develop young singers and move them onto the stage of the Met. There's also the National Council auditions, which you had mentioned you'd done. Joan Henkelman, who was on the call, headed up our National Council auditions here in San Diego for a very long time. So she knows that very well. And that's also a path. It's a path for discovering young singers that you can award prizes to and hopefully they develop, but can also eventually find their way to the stage of the Met. It's very interesting that you did both and they sort of knew you through those two things. And then they said, you know what, you're just ready to go ahead and go on stage, which was great. Like, you don't need to spend time in the Young Artist Program. It wasn't the Lindemann program then, was it?
I don't think so. I don't think it was Lindemann then.
Yeah,
it was the previous iteration.
Yeah, so it's now called the Lindemann Young Artist Program at the Met. And, it's very, very well supported and lots of resources, but the young artists spend a lot of time watching and waiting, and then eventually they might get something on stage, and you kind of just like jumped on stage, which is really fantastic and amazing.
Thanks. Yeah. It was an amazing gift, and the first time on the stage was incredible.
What was your debut at the Met?
Rigoletto, Count Ceprano and Rigoletto.
Oh, very nice. Excellent.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so this is great. It's so easy to talk to you. I could just chat and forget that I've got an agenda of things I want to say. So you also have won quite a few awards, and many people may not know the sort of importance of these awards, but 3 that I just noticed: Richard Tucker, the Sullivan Foundation, and George London are like the top 3 recognized, I think, vocal awards in the country, and you won all of those, which is kind of amazing. Yeah. And so I got to say that, we know of you as a comedian in a way, and a comedic singer, but that says to me that the vocal chops are there more than I think people give you credit for, because you've been awarded these prestigious awards that are not about how funny you are, they're about how you really sing, right?
Thanks. I hope so. Yeah, I would like to think so. Funny things are more effective when they're beautiful, and if they're sung beautifully. Comedy is, I always think comedy is most effective and most striking when it's played very, very seriously, and not, you can do shtick. Shtick is fine. Shtick is fun. Although shtick here and there, we love, of course. But yeah, so having, being able to sing this repertoire beautifully has been something that I've always strived for. So
and timing is sort of the key to good comedy, and timing can't be spontaneous, right? It has to actually be thought through, and like beautiful singing, it has to be planned and rehearsed and laid out, and
and crafted. I mean, timing, comedy, beautiful singing, all of it is craft that requires endless work and endless commitment and endless learning. And growing up, my parents always said to me, if you ever stop enjoying what you're doing, go do something else. And it seems rather simplistic, but it's pretty much on the money. And for me, part of that enjoyment all the way along, and for as long as, as the industry will have me, is about the learning. Is about what we can learn and how this phrase can be turned, how that group of words can be said in a different way. So yeah, comedy is about timing, it's about practice, it's about precision, it's about simplicity. And then it's all about, it's about taking it back, looking at it from 40,000 feet and being like, okay, where shall we move these chess pieces? How shall we rearrange things slightly? And then we get, the fantastic impetus of our colleagues.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I did mention earlier that Opera News, there was an article in Opera News recently that called you the man of 1,000 faces. And I think, my reaction to that is you're like man of 1,000 faces in one performance, usually, because you're, and I don't mean that there's a way to mug, and that's just like, what you making a bit out of something that's not really, it's sort of gratuitous. But actually having sort of a plastic face that you can adapt and adopt different things like you do is actually thought out. And it's all, again, it's all to tell the story, right? And to be expressive, right?
Exactly right, yeah. It's really, it's thought out, but it's also our reaction to what the music and the text are leading us to.
Right. And
what our interactions with, our colleagues in the storytelling are leading us to do. So if that means that we go there, then we go there. Or if it means that we go there, then we go there. We go wherever we're led.
So you guys just saw 2 of his 1,000 faces, and there's a lot more. So I'm gonna play our first sample, which unfortunately is not video because we did not have a good video take of this, but we had a good audio take. And so I'm going to play an audio example that luckily we just overlaid with some stills, some photos, when you were Modern Major General with us.
Oh, fun.
And I didn't start at the beginning because it becomes very long. So I started in, I think, the second kind of strophe, verse of it, to the end, where you actually come back and sing, tell the maestro to sing, to play it a little faster.
Yes.
And I want to remind everyone, the world, and when we produced this, the word covfefe had just become a thing. It just entered into our language. And if you guys know Pirates of Penzance, the Modern Major General is a rhymer. So he has to come up with rhymes in the middle of the song. And the bit is that he has to come up with them very quickly because the music winds down and he has to find another rhyme. So covfefe had a place in
Yes, it did.
this production. So Joseph, why don't we listen to the first sample?
I knew I'm making kids to risking also since a paradox. I had to hold across the climb of British paradox. I quoted Alan Childs and a private video governess. In comic second floor, peculiarities parabolas. I can tell under the Raphaelis of Gerardas and Sophonis. I know the cooking chorus from the frogs of Aristophanes. But I can have a few that which I've heard the music's enough for. Oh my, let's see what rhymes. Patience, no. Mikado, no. Ah, yes. And whistle all the airs that infernal it's pitiful! 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 Then I can write a washing bill in Babylonic uniform and tell you every detail of character uniform. It's salted bread is vegetable, animal and mineral. I am the very model of a modern Major General. It's salted bread is vegetable, animal and mineral. He is the very model of a modern Major General. In fact, when I know what is meant by Babylon and Ravelin, when I can tell a sight, a mouse, a rifle from a javelin, when such affairs, as sorties and surprises I'm more wary at, And when I know precisely what is meant by commissariat, I've not a bloody clue. When I have learned the progress that's been made in modern gunnery, when I know more of tactics than a novice in a nunnery, in short, when I'm a smattering of elemental strategy. Oh, now this is hard, let's see. Strategy and coterie, no. Covfefe, no. I've got it! You'll see if the Major General has a strategy! For my military knowledge, so plucky and adventure, has only been brought down to the beginning of the century. But still it matters vegetable, animal, and mineral. I am the very model of a modern Major General. Untitled, s'il vous plaît. For my military knows so I'm plucky and adventure, has only been brought out at the beginning of the century. But still the matter is vegetable, animal, and mineral. I am the very model of a modern Major General!
Okay, I had to play that just because, you know, it's so phenomenal, even though we didn't have good video. And that's probably the fastest recapitulation of last strophe that I've ever heard. So how much practice did that take?
Months.
Yeah.
Months.
So I have to say, I didn't play the role, but I sang Modern Major General one time in an outreach education program. And the way I learned that was on Stairmaster. Because
love it, yes.
Because, you know, exactly. Trying to get it into your body. There are so many words in that, and you have to try to find the way to express the funny moments of the character in the middle of saying all those words. So you were brilliant in that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Have you sung it before or after?
Nope. It's the only time I've sung it yet.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the only GNS that we've done with San Diego Opera. There's, you know, we had another company in San Diego that did a lot of Gilbert and Sullivan that no longer exists. So I think there was sort of a sense that that was taken care of by another company. But, you know, it's great. The music is great. That production I thought was brilliant, and you know, you were surrounded by a great cast too.
Oh my gosh! I mean, Greer Grimsley is the Pirate King, for goodness sake, and Loretta.
Yeah.
I mean, and Maureen, and we could just go on, and Evan. It was an amazing. That was an amazing experience.
Good.
I just had the most wonderful time. Yeah.
So you saw a little bit of his Thousand Faces there in the pictures. There were, you know, a few examples. So let's talk about the world we're living in right now. What has the past year been like for you?
It's been a challenge, as it has for all of us. You know, I started out this year, and I remember very clearly a conversation I had with family, a conversation I had with family at different phone calls. Phone calls, they've so become a thing again, and I'm so happy about it. And I said that to one of my dearest friends in the world about a week into this whole situation, into the pandemic. And yeah, connection. It's become about connection. It's become about writing real letters again, writing emails that aren't just sure, yeah, fine, okay. It's been it's also been about taking a step back and making sure that, you know, we stay healthy in all the ways that we can, that we take care of our loved ones, we take care of our friends and family, our community, our opera community. Yeah, there's been a lot of learning.
Sure. You know, it's a really great point about the phone calls and ways that we connect. And, you know, we started things like this because, you know, we see our patrons when we're performing, and it's a way for us to remain connected. And we were like, well, what do we do? Like, so we got to start coming up with some ways to remain connected. So it was a response, but now we realize that we're more connected in ways by doing this.
Yeah.
And this is one of many programs that we do similarly. But I think we'll continue because it's a great way for us to just touch each other more frequently. And, that did not happen before COVID, right?
Correct.
We were kind of in a process of just moving through the things we needed to do. So maybe that's been a blessing here.
I feel it has. I feel it has. I feel that the things like Zoom, things like this, taking a step back, taking time to really be with each other, to really listen to each other.
Yeah.
I think that there's been even more of that, and the breakneck pace that many of us probably kept, realizing it or not, prior to the pandemic. I think that might be a benefit of having time to pull back.
So, in pre-COVID, you were clearly a fixture at the Met. So that was probably some fixed things. And then you had a lot of stuff that you were doing internationally around that, or pulling them together, let's say. But you have to really sort all that out way far in advance, right? You have to know years in advance what the shape of your schedule is going to look like. Now, I'm not sure that all of the people on the call really understand that. Like before COVID, you were probably booked years in advance, right?
Yeah. 2, 3, in some cases 4 years.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
And that's a good thing, but it's also a challenging thing for you as an individual. It's a good thing to know that you've got people that want to hire you and you've got income coming and all of that. But also, like, if you want to have a relationship or you want to have connection with your family, and being a singer that's successful is a really challenging thing.
Yes. Yeah. The travel is a challenging thing. The planning is a challenging thing. I tend to be a planner, though. I tend to love, I have organizational charts that probably would make people just look and go, why? But, everything is color coded.
Art?
Everything is color coded for work and for time off and for, and the like. So, which of course makes things like COVID, kind of drive you a little extra crazy because all that planning has just evaporated. But look, the planning also gives some flexibility.
Yeah.
Well,
it's interesting that you say that, because when you're more successful, you actually have to put in the color of time off, right? You actually have to do that. Otherwise, it won't happen. And then your personal life and the refresh and the repause, and which as an artist you need, doesn't actually happen.
Absolutely right. Yeah, you have to have time to recharge the batteries. And for me, that time is spent far away from the internet, not far away from music. Music is always with me. Music is always here in some way, shape, or form. But it's usually spent on an island in the middle of nowhere, swimming with creatures that may or may not want to eat me, and I'm okay with that. I have this fascination with sharks. I think sharks are beautiful. I think they are so majestic and so absolutely powerful, and
so dangerous.
and so dangerous. Yes, yeah, absolutely. And yes, I've swum in a bay with hundreds of little black-tipped reef sharks in various states of maturity, and not been frightened, just sat there in awe of how absolutely gorgeous that can be and how peaceful that is. So those are the important things. That the daily recharge for me is yoga and exercise.
Yeah.
Yep.
Me too. I've now, I was not a yoga person pre-COVID, but now 4 days a week I'm doing yoga. So it's
fantastic.
Yeah, it's a way to get, grounded and recentered. That's fantastic.
Exactly.
So how is, now that we're starting to talk about reopening, and I know, like, for us, a lot of opera companies sort of had this log jam of things that we said, oh, it's not happening now, we're going to put it on a shelf. And then the doors open, you're like, let's take all those things off the shelf now, let's make them happen. So how are the next couple of years looking for you?
Thankfully good. Thankfully good. Yeah, no, yeah, thankfully things are, I have work coming up and I'm grateful for that.
Awesome.
And I have I've reconnected as well to some music, and this started actually just pre-pandemic. I used to be someone who wanted to be in the theater. This is at the very beginning of my career. I wanted to be in the theater 6 and 7 nights a week. I just wanted to go and listen and listen and listen. And about 5 years ago, that fell off a bit just because I felt so tired.
Yeah.
And about a year ago, well, a year pre-COVID, it was rekindled. And so in line with that, the same has, with art song, with music, certain musical theater that I've always been connected to my entire life, with the cabaret format, which I think is absolutely spectacular and wonderful. I don't know if you know Marilyn May.
Sure, of course. I'm from Kansas City. I know Marilyn May.
Oh my gosh, forgive me. Sorry. Yes, of course. Okay, so she's kind of my idol. And I've seen her several times. And anyway, but all of that to say, reconnecting to all of that, it's just marvelous. And kind of looking ahead, going, well, I hope, there are times I will do my best to make time, space, and opportunity, if I can, for that type of work as well.
It's fantastic. Do you live in New York, in the city?
I actually live in Charleston, West Virginia.
I didn't know that.
Yep. Yeah.
Is that fairly recent?
That's pretty recent. Yeah, that's pretty recent.
When I was in New York, we sort of orbited around each other, but we didn't really know each other. We had a lot of mutual friends, but you were in the city at that point.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And then I left the city in 2011 and kind of consolidated to Seattle, and was there for a while. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Until 2018. I love Seattle. I always refer to the West Coast as the best coast, even though I'm born on the East Coast. I really love the West Coast.
We sort of feel that way too. Yeah. So we need to talk about the thing you're doing for us, Barber of Seville. So you've sung this role a lot, right?
Yes.
You probably need to call your mom to figure this out, but do you have any idea of how many productions of this you've done?
I believe I've done 12 at this point.
Yeah.
I think. I know my first one was in 2006 in St. Louis.
Wow.
2006 in St. Louis.
So just briefly, just tell the people that are with us a little bit about your character in the opera.
Sure. So Dr. Bartolo he's a curmudgeon. He's kind of a lonely guy. He's not mean. He can be mean, but he's not cruel. He doesn't intentionally do most of the things he does, but he's so desperately lonely and sad, and he's so painfully awkward from a social point of view that he really doesn't get how to interact with people in general. So he's the uncle that always says the wrong thing at dinner. He is the neighbor who you kind of just step back from and go, gosh, I wish he had a friend. And you kind of wish Bartolo had a friend. And Bartolo has a few bizarre friends in Basilio and in certain tellings, not in this one, but in certain tellings with Berta. But yeah,
the audience is a little sad for him.
I think so. I mean, look, he can be played very, very angry and nasty and mean. And certainly we all have that side to ourselves. Yeah. And certainly that is part of what Bartolo is. Yeah. So for him to be a real three-dimensional character, he has to have an edge. It's just that his edge is born of sadness and of just enough privilege to be stupid.
That's a great expression. So we're going to listen to a little clip, and then we're going to talk at the end, before we have time for questions, about the wackiness that you're involved with us in this crazy iteration. So this is from Minnesota, which is a different world of Bartolo than what we're going to be doing, but it still gives you an example of your Bartolo. So let's listen to that. It's relatively short.
queste scuse, signorina. Oh, le mie sorte queste scuse, signorina. Vi consiglio, mia carina, un po' meglio a imposturar. Meglio, 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 meglio. Vi consiglio, mia carina, un po' meglio a imposturar. Meglio, 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 meglio. Vi consiglio, mia carina, un po' meglio a imposturar. Sì, sì. Vi consiglio, mia carina, un po' meglio a imposturar. All'autor della mia sorte, queste scuse, signorina, vi consiglio, mia carina, un po' meglio a imposturar. Un po' meglio a imposturar. Un po' meglio a imposturar.
So that was not too long ago, actually, right? That was just pre-COVID, maybe? Oh, muted. Yeah. Who's going to let him speak? Can we unmute Patrick?
Yay, there we
There
go.
we go. Yeah.
Yeah, that was just pre-COVID. That was in October, November of 2019.
Wow.
Yeah.
So your last Bartolo, maybe?
Yes, that was the last Bartolo. Yep. That was the
Okay,
last one.
so our world is going to be a little different. So
Yes.
I first want to just let everybody know that's on this call, you know, we are in still, even though we're lifting restrictions bit by bit here, we're still in a world of restrictions, wisely so. And so we follow the recommendations of the union that represents singers. And they were sort of demands, now they've become recommendations, but we're still following those. And one of the things that is interesting, and I'll say it that way, because it's like almost impossible, but it can wind up being interesting too, is that the distance that we are taking on between singers, which is 120 square feet for each singer, 15 feet in front of the mouth to the next singer and 4 feet on either side. But if the singer turns, which people tend to do when they're acting, then that 15 feet has to be consistent. So it's a challenge when you want to tell a story, if you're going to have distance between the singers. So that's part of the world that you're living in, but also the period of the production that we're living in is kind of the bridging the gap between 1960s and 1970s. So you've only had a couple of days of rehearsals, but is there anything you want to share with us about that kind of experience that you're in now?
Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. In terms of the distance, it's interesting because on stage tension is something that you can hold from 5 feet, 2 inches, or 40 feet.
Mm-hmm.
That is more about intention than it is really about, I mean, yes, of course, sometimes you need intimate moments, not saying that, but there's a lot you can do while keeping safe distance. So that's been a really fantastic revelation this time around. The period of that we're in is just way too much fun. Way too much fun. When Katura and I spoke, Katura is our director. When Katura and I spoke before we all arrived in San Diego, she said to me, well, think, Rona Martin's laughing. And I said, oh, goody. And then I found Ernestine.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And I thought, okay, there have to be moments of Ernestine that I can bring somehow into Bartolo. I don't know where they will be, but somewhere in the course of this, there will be a moment of Ernestine. Maybe in the dancing that broke out today, maybe there's something there. We'll see. I don't know. There's not a phone. There's not a, you know, I can't call Henry Kissinger. But
So I hope, you know, I know I'm aging myself, but I hope most people on the call remember Laugh In, and particularly the cocktail hours that happened in Laugh In, where you remember there was a lot of crazy dancing with music that happened, and then there would be a stop and someone would deliver a one-liner to the audience, to the camera, and then it would go back to a moment of dancing. So I know Katura's, when the director, when she talked to me about it, she was saying that's going to be a big influence. So that's where you're getting Ernestine from, which is so smart and funny. It's going to be, let's just say it's going to be a very wacky Barber, don't you think?
yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be wacky, but wacky in a really fantastic, fun, and very sincere way.
Yeah.
I mean, all of, you know, yeah, it's really, it's fabulous. It's really fabulous the way it's been conceived. And yeah, I'm very excited for it. I really am very, very excited for what we're seeing evolve already in, you know, day 3 between our different characters, and the rapport is wonderful.
It's a good cast too. It's a very, I mean, a good cast in every way. Good singing cast, but also a good performer cast. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited. So yeah, I talked about you being the man of 1,000 faces, and one of the things that our audience who attended Bohème might remember, and it was a huge surprise to me, is how intimate it can wind up being. You know, when you're in a 3,000 seat hall, which is what the Civic Theater is like, the way you conceive of the visual impact is very different from when you are creating something for people inside of their cars that are viewing mostly on screens. And so there's a lot of close-up on 8 screens throughout a parking lot. You still see the stage, even if you're in the very back. We hope you see the stage far, far away. But most of what you're taking in is the audio through your car, which is mixed beautifully, but also a lot of close-ups of you on these massive screens around the stage, I mean, around the parking lot. So the man of 1,000 faces, you're going to have to use your face a lot in this, right? There's going to be a lot of close-up. Yeah. There's Katura, the director, conceived of, or she referred to it to me as a confession cam, which I hope is going to stay. It's what her idea is. When we're in rehearsal, it is staying. Good. So
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's staying. I love it.
So some of these things, you know, when you get into rehearsals and then they don't really work technically, who knows? But our idea now is that there will be almost like a GoPro cam built into the stage somewhere. So there's the ability, just like Laugh In, for the artists to make a real direct to the camera. So there's going to be a lot of close up and a lot of humor, which I think is going to be great. And I'm so glad to hear you talk about distance as a way that it's just not a thing to be afraid of. It's actually, it's fun. Yeah,
exactly. And well, and also, I mean, I think it's, you know, partly the art form that we work in. I mean, opera, you know, we've always worked on proscenium stages of 40 and 50 feet.
Yeah.
So working with distance is not really an issue.
Yeah.
And translating that to film, also, you know, the faces stay the same. We just capture them.
That's exactly right. You don't have to do anything different. It's just the frame is a little different, right?
Yeah.
So I remember Bruce Stasna, who's conducting this, who's our music administrator and chorus master, saying during Bohème rehearsals to the singers, you know, you're going to be far from the maestro, but it's not that big of a deal. Just think the arena of Verona and you'll be fine. Because if you've ever been to Verona and you've seen how far that conductor is from the singers, but it works. You can make it work, right? So it's the same world. And then I think the thing I'm most proud of is that we found a way to do it safely. And really what we're talking about is expressing story, telling stories. That's what opera's about. And we figured out a way to do that and still mitigate risk, not just for the audience, putting the audience in their cars. That's an important thing because the risk is mitigated there, but also for everybody involved, the cast, the crew, wig and makeup. You guys need to know we bring in hundreds of people for each of these, and we have to think about the risk factor for everybody. And, you know, knock on wood, we were able to make it, you know, COVID free during Bohème, and I'm sure we'll have the same for this. So we just have a few minutes left. Man, I could go on for another hour with you.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Well, and you're in performance 3 of 4 performances. You get new information from everybody that you're working with, and you move down that path. But if you've sung Leporello before, when you walk into San Diego, it's a whole new cast, and it's
Correct.
a new director, and it's a new conductor, and each of those are things that bring more things to you to think about and to be real in that moment, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm processing the energy and the ideas every day that I go home from rehearsal. I'm thinking, oh, maybe it would go that, maybe it could work that way, or maybe it goes that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, yeah.
Well, and for me, as a general director and as a producer, what makes me sort of most excited is when I see someone not change the role, but actually have it be different from night to night because they're responding in the moment, which I find thrilling. I think there's one more question that I want to address. For your role as Kissinger, did you do a lot of research? Did you have to think particularly about Kissinger?
I did actually. You know, what's interesting, I actually met Henry, and it wasn't intentional. It was complete coincidence that I got to meet Henry once. So it was all the 13-second interaction. So I can't tell you that I, you know, garnered any great knowledge about Henry from that handshake. But I did meet Henry once. I did a lot of research. I also grew up with parents and grandparents who told me that I looked like Henry. I know someone on the call today actually mentioned that. And yeah, fair enough. I look a little like Henry. So yeah, there was a lot of research, a lot of learning. I'm also kind of a politics junkie. So, and I'm a history junkie as well. And I also love bubbles. So Schramsberg, which of course is the sparkling that was brought by Nixon and Kissinger. I mean, if you think about it, the visit of Nixon was really orchestrated by Kissinger. Kissinger did quite a bit of the legwork. So, but Schramsberg is one of my favorites.
That's awesome.
So,
what a nice segue or tie back to where we started. So, okay, I do try to hold this to an hour for our audience, but particularly for you because you're in the middle of rehearsals. So thank you so much.
Joy, thank you.
If you don't have tickets yet, I know Darren put a link in how to get tickets. It's going to be hysterical, super fun. You're going to kick yourself if you miss it. So please buy tickets and come and see Patrick and the rest of his laugh-in friends in Barber of Seville. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Have a great night. See you soon.